40, 42 U.S. Standard Code, Chapter 116, Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know. Title 42, the Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 116, Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know. 11,001, Establishment of State Commission and Planning Districts of Local Committees. 11,002, Substance and Facility Covenant Notification. 11,003, Comprehensive Emergency Response Plan. 11,004, Emergency Notification. 11,005, Emergency Training Review of Emergency Systems. Subchapter 2, Reporting Requirements. 11,021, Material Safety Data Sheets. 11,022, Emergency Hazardous Chemical Inventory Form. 11,023, Toxic Chemical Release Form. Subchapter 3, General Provisions. 11,041, Relationship to other law. 11,042, Trade Secrets. 11,043, Provisions and Information of Health Professionals, Doctors, and Nurses. 11,044, Public availability of plans, data sheets, forms, and follow-up notices. 11,045, Enforcement. 11,046, Civil Actions. 11,047, Exemptions. 11,048, Regulations. 11,049, Definitions. 11,050, Authorization of Appropriations. 42, the subchapter Emergency Planning Notification, citing 42 U.S. Standard Code 11,001. The statute establishment of State Emergency Response Commission not later than 6 months after 17 in 1986. The governor of each state shall appoint the State Emergency Response Commission. The governor may designate as the State Emergency Response Commission one or more existing emergency response organizations that are state-sponsored and appointed. The governor shall, to the extent practicable, appoint a person to the State Emergency Response Commission who technically expertise in the emergency response field. The State of Emergency Response Commission shall appoint the local emergency committees under subsection of this section and shall supervise, coordinate the activities of the such committees. The State Emergency Response Commission shall establish procedures for receiving, processing, requesting from public for information under 11,044 of this title, including Terrier 2 on information of 11,022 of this title. Such procedures shall include the designation of any official to serve as a coordinator. Information of a governor of any state does not designate a State Emergency Response Commission within such period that the government shall operate a State Emergency Response Commission until the governor makes such a decision. Not be established an emergency planning district not later than 9 months after October 17, 1986. The State Emergency Response Commission shall designate the emergency planning districts in order to facilitate preparation, implementation of commission who designate existing political subdivisions or mission to designate existing political subdivisions or multi-jurisdictional planning organizations as such a district. In emergency and planning areas that involve more than one state, the State Emergency Response Commissions of all potential affected states may designate emergency planning district and local emergency planning committees by agreement, and make in such designation of the State Emergency Response Commission shall indicate that which facilities subject the requirements of this subchapter are within such emergency planning district. C. Establish the local emergency planning committees not later than 30 days after the designation of the emergency planning district or 10 months after October 17, 1986, which is the number of local emergency planning committees for each emergency representative from each of the following groups of the organizations: elected state, local officials, law enforcement, civil defense, firefighting, first aid, health, local environmental, hospital, and transportation personnel, broadcast, printing, media, community groups, owners and operators of facilities subject to the group's owners and operators of subject to the requirements of the subchapter. The subcommittee will such appointment of the chairperson shall establish rules by which the committee shall function. The rules shall include provisions of the public notification of the committee activities, public meeting to discuss the emergency planning, and public committee response to such comments of the committee, distribution of this of the emergency plan, the local emergency planning shall be established and procedures for receiving the processing request from the public of information under section 11,044 of this title, including Terrier 2 information. Under section 11,022 of the title, such procedures shall include the designation of an official to serve as the coordinator for information. D. The revision of State Emergency Response Commission revises the designation of appointment under section B.C. in this section as it deems appropriate. Interested persons may petition to the State Emergency Planning Response Committee to modify the membership of local emergency planning committee. Miscellaneous effective chapter date effective October 17th, 1986. See section 4 of pubs 99 through 49 set out by the effective date of 1986 amendment number under the section 90601 of this title. Short title. Section 300 of the Title 3 of this pub 99 through 49 9 provided that this title enacting the chapter may cite it in as an emergency planning committee right to know of Act of 1986. Executive Order number 12856. Executive Order 12856, August 3, 1993. FA of the FR 14981, which provides federal compliance with the right to know laws, pollution prevention requirements, was revoked by the Executive Order of 13418, Section number N01, April 21st, 2004, 65, FR 24604, formally set out as a note under the Section 4321 of this title. Cite 42, Title 42, Emergency Planning Committee, Right to Know, Emergency Planning Notification, Section 11,002, Substance and Facilities covered in Notification. A substance covered in general. 1. The substance is a subject or requirement of this subchapter and is, if the subject or the substance is to the requirements of the subchapter. If the substance is on the list published under the paragraph 2 is listed extremely hazardous substances within 30 days after October 17, 1986, the administration shall publish a list of extremely hazardous statements. I repeat, Section 11,000.2, substance facility covered in notification statute. A substance covered in general. A substance is subject to the requirements of the subchapter if substances is on a list published under paragraph 2, which in 30 days after October 17, 1986, the administrator shall publish the list of extremely hazardous substances. The list shall be by the same of the list substances published in November 1985 by the administrator in the Appendix A in the Chemical and Emergency Preparedness Program Interim Guidance. 3. The threshold to the time listed referred to the paragraph 2 is published for the administration shall 1. Publish the interim filing regulation, establish a threshold planning quantity for each substance on the list, talking and accounting the criteria described in paragraph 4, and 2. The initiate a rulemaking in order to publish in final regulations, establish the threshold planning and quantity for each substance of list. B. The threshold of the planning quantities may at least administrate discretion and be based on the classes of chemical categories of the facilities. C. If the administrator fails to publish the interim final regulation, establish threshold planning quantity for a substance within 30 days after October 17, 1986. The threshold planning quantity for substance shall be 2 pounds until such time as the administration publish regulations establishing threshold for substances. 4. The revisions of the administrator may review or revise the list and thresholds under paragraph 2 and 3 from time to time. A revision to this list shall take into account of toxicity, reactivity, volatility, dispersibility, combustibility, flammability of a substance. For the purpose of proceeding the substance, the term of toxicity shall include any short-term or long-term health effects which may result in a short-term exposure of substance. facility covered one except provided in section 11,004 of this title. A facility is a subject requirements, a subchapter or substance on the listed referred subsection, and the section is present at the facility is the amount of excess or threshold planning quantity established for each substance for the purpose of emergency planning. A governor in a state emergency response commission may designate additional facilities which shall subject to the requirements of the subchapter. If this designation is made after the public notices an opportunity for the comment, the government emergency response commission shall notify the facility concerned of any facility designated under the paragraph. See the emergency planning notification. Not later than 7 months after October 17, 1986, the owner or operator of any facilities of the requirement of this subchapter reasoning subsection B1 of this section shall notify state emergency response commissions of the state in which the facility is located that the state such facility is subject to the requirements of subchapter. Therefore, as and if a substance is on the list of extremely hazardous substances referred to in the subsection A of the section, first becomes presented at the as such facility until it accesses the threshold planning quantity established for such substance. If there is a revision of such a list, the facility as present a substance is a revised list in excess of the threshold planning quantity established for the such substances, the owner, operator, and facility shall notify the State Emergency Response Commission and Local Emergency Planning Committee within 60 days after the acquisition or provision of such facilities and is subject to the requirements of this subchapter. D. The notification administrator of the State Emergency Response Commission shall notify the administrator of the facility subject to the requirement of this subchapter by notifying the administrator, and each notification received to the facility under the subsection C of the section N of each facility is designated for the governor or state emergency. Pubs 99 through 499, Title 3, Section 302, October 17, 1986, 100 Stat of 1730. Title 42 is Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 116, Emergency Planning, Community Right to Know, Emergency Planning and Notification, Section 11,003, Section 11,003, Comprehensive Emergency Response. A. Planning and require each local emergency planning committee shall completely or preparation of emergency according to the section not later than 2 years after October 17, 1986. The committee shall review in such a plan once a year, more frequently as changed circumstances in the committee and or at any faculty it may require. B. Resource in each local emergency planning committee shall evaluate the need for resource necessary to develop, implement, and exercise the emergency plan. Shall be recommendations within the respect and additional resources that may be required for providing the additional resource plan. C. Planning an emergency plan shall include, but is not limited to, each of the following identifications of the facility subject to the requirements of the subchapter that are within the emergency planning district's identification routes, like to be used for its transportation substance, like list extremely hazardous substance referred to section 11,002 of this title, and identification of the additional facility contributing or subject to additional risk due to the proximity of facility subject to the requirements of the subchapter, such hospitals, natural gas or facilities, methods, procedures to be followed by facility owners and operators, local emergencies, medical personnel to respond to any release of the substances, designation of any committee emergency coordination facility emergency coordinator who such shall determine if necessary to implement the plan for the procedure, providing reliability of effective timely notification of facility emergency coordinators of the committee emergency correspondence to person designated in emergency plan. The plan that releases has occurred consistent to the emergency notification requirements, section 11,004 of the title. 5. The methods of determining the occurrency of the release in the area of the population likely to be affected by such release, a description of emergency equipment, any facilities in the community, at each facility in the committee community subject to the requirements of the subchapter and identification. Person response for such equipment, facilities, evacuation plans, including the provision of precautionary evacuation alternative traffic routes. 8. The training programs, including schedule of training, local emergency response, and medical response personnel. Methods of schedule of exercising the emergency plan. D. Providing the information for each facility subject to the requirements of this subchapter within 30 days after the establishment of a local emergency planning committee. The emergency planning district in which the such facility is located or within 11 months of after October 17, 1986, which is earlier, the owner-operator of the facility shall notify the Emergency Planning Committee or the Governor. If there is no committee, a facility representative who will participate in the emergency planning process, or facility emergency coordinator, the owner of the operator facility shall prompt inform the Emergency Planning Committee of any relevant changes that occurring in such facilities and changes that occur and are expected to occur. 3. Upon the request of emergency planning, the owner of the operator facility shall promptly provide information to the committee necessary for developing implementation of the emergency plan. C. The review state and emergency response commission after the completion of the emergency plan under the subsection A of the section of the emergency planning district. The local emergency planning committee shall submit a copy of the plan to the State Emergency Commission of each state in which the district is located. The commission shall review the plan and make the recommendations committee and revisions of the plan that may be necessary to ensure coordination of such plan within emergency response plans of the other emergency districts to the maximum extent practicable. Such review shall not delay the implementation of such plan. F. The guidance documents. The national response team established by the pursuant of the national contingency is established by under the section 9605 of this title shall publish guidance documents for preparation and implementation of the emergency plan. Such documents shall be published no later than 5 months after October 17, 1986. Review of the plans by the regional response team. The regional response teams established from pursuant and national contingency established under the section 90605 of this title may review the comment of the emergency plan and other issues in preparation, implementation, exercise of such upon the request of local emergency committee, and such as review shall delay on implementation of the plan. Sources: pubs from 99-499, Title 3, Section 303, October 17, 1986, 100 Stats 1731, Title 42, Public Health and Welfare Emergency Planning Committee, Right to Know, Emergency Planning and Notification, Subchapter 1, Section 11,004, Emergency Notification. Types of releases: 11,002, the substance which requires CERCILA notice in Section 11,002 of this title occurs in the facility at which the hazardous chemical is produced, used, and stored. Such release requires notification under the section of 103A and the Comprehensive Emergency Response Composition and Reliability Act of 1980, Title 42, U.S. Standard Code 9603A. Here in their section referred to, the CERCILA is 42, U.S. Standard Code 9601, intent, etc. Intent sequence. And the owner of the operator of the facility shall immediately provide notice of described subsection B of this section. 2 of the other 11,002 substances are released an extremely hazardous substance referred to in section 11,002 of the title occurs with the facility at which the hazardous chemical is produced, used, and stored, and such release that is not subject to notification requirements under the section 103 of the CERCILA, or should I say the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act of 1980. The owner of the operator of the facility shall immediately provide notice of the described subsection section only if released, and if it is only is not only federally permitted to release is not a federally permitted release as defined in Section 101.10 of Circular for Title 42 U.S. Standard Codes 9601 Part 10. Then the amount of excess in the quantity of the administrator has determined by regulation requires notice, and C occurs in the manner in which it require notification under the Section 103 of Circular Title 42 U.S. Standard Codes 9603A, unless until the supersedes regulation establishment of quantity of extremely hazardous substances is described in this paragraph. Quantity 1 pound such may be deemed in quantity of the release. It requires notice as described in Section B of this section. Number 111.02 substances which require circular notice. If release is a substance which is not on the list referred to in the Section 11,002 in this title occurs in the facility at which hazardous chemical is produced, used, stored, and such release requires no notification under the Section 103 of Circular U.S. Standard Codes. The owner or operator shall provide the notice as follows. If substance is one of them which reportable quantity has been established under Section 102 of the Circular Title 42 U.S. Standard Codes 9602, the owner or operator shall provide notice as described in the subsection of the section. The substance is one of the reportable quantity has not been established under Section 102 of Circular Title 42 U.S. Standard Code 9602A until April 30th, 1988. The owner or operator shall provide for release 1 pound, one or more substances the same notice, and community emergency coordinator the local emergency committee at the same time, the same form. The notice is provided from the National Response Center and under Section 103 of Circular Title 42 U.S. Standard Code 9603A. On and after April 30th, 1988, the owner and operator shall provide a release of 1 pound or more substances notice described in subsection B of this subsection. For exempt release, this section does not apply to any release which results in exposure to persons solely within the sites which is on the facility which the facility is located. Notification of recipients of notice required under subsection A of this section shall be given immediately after the release, and the owner operator of the facility by such means as telephone, radio, or in person to the community emergency coordinator for the local emergency planning committees have been established pursuant to Section 11,001 of this title of the area likely to be affected or release, and the title release of this committee and established pursuant of Section 11,001 of this title, and for any area likely to be affected by the release to the State Emergency Planning Commission of the state likely to be affected by the release with respect to the transportation of the substance subject of the requirements section of the storage incidents the storage incidents. I repeat, recipients of notice. Notice required for this subsection. The subsection shall be given immediately to the response of the operator, community emergency coordinator, local emergency planning. Title is for any likely to be affected of the release to the affected of the release with respect to transportation of the substance subject to the requirements of the transportation storage incident of the transportation notice. The requirements of this action in respect for the release shall be satisfied by dialing 911 or the absence of 911 emergency calling the operator. 2. The contents notice that required under Section A of this section shall be included in the following to the extent known at the time of the notice, so long that no delay is responded in emergency result. A chemical name and identifying the substance involved in the release, identifying whether the substance is one of the lists referred to in the subsection 11,002 of this title, and an estimated quantity of any substance that was released into the environment at time and duration of the release to the medium or media of which was released occurred unknown an anticipated acute chronic health risk and associated emergency with an appropriate advice regarding medical attention necessary for exposure to individuals. G. The proper precautions to take a result of release, including evacuation, unless information readily available for the community emergency coordinator pursuant to the emergency plan, the name of the telephone number of the person and the person to be contacted for further information following up emergency notification as soon as practicable after a release which requires notice under the subsection the section, and such owner and operator shall provide a written follow-up emergency notice or notices as more information available, setting the forth and updating the information required under subsection B of the section, including the additional information within respect and to the 1. The action responding to the containing of the release. 2. Is knowing anticipated acute chronic risk associated with the release. 3. Appropriate advising regarding medical attention necessary for exposed individuals. Transportation exemption not applicable. Extremely provided by section 11,047 of this title relating to the transportation does not apply to this section. Pubs 99 through 49, title 3, section 304, October 17, 1986, 100 stat 173.3 is the source. In reference in text, the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act of 1980, circular referred into subsection A1 and 3 in published 96 through 510 of December 11, 1980, number 94 stat of 2767, as amended, which is classified practicable chapters 103, number 906 of the 1 as sequence. Of the title for complete classification of the Act of the Code, the short title note of the state said is under section 90601 titling tables. Title 42, Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 116, Emergency Planning, Community Right to Know, Subchapter Emergency Planning and Notification, Section 11,005, Emergency Training Review, Emergency Systems, Emergency Training Program, officials for the United States government carrying existing federal programs, emergency training, and authorized to specifically provide education program of the federal, state, and local personnel in hazard mitigation, emergency preparedness, fire prevention and control, and disaster and response, long-term disaster recovery, national security, technological, and non-natural hazard, emergency process, and such process program. Such provides special emphasis for such training education within respect of hazardous chemicals. A state local program support the authorized to be as appropriated the Federal Emergency Management Agency for each of the fiscal years 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990. $5 million for making grants to support programs of state local governments and to support university-sponsored programs which are designated to improve emergency planning, preparedness, mitigation, response, recovery capabilities. Such programs shall provide special emphasis with respect to emergency-associated hazardous chemicals. Such grants may be not exceeding 80% of the cost of such a program. The remaining 20% of the such cost shall be funded from non-federal sources. 3 of the other programs, nothing is in this section shall affect the availability of appropriation of the Federal Emergency Management Agency for any programs carried out in such agency of the programs referred to in paragraph 2. Review of the emergency system. A review. The administration initiates not later than 30 days after the October 7, 1986 review of the emergency system, monitoring, detection, preventing the release of the extremely hazardous substances, representative domestic facilities that produce, use, and store extremely hazardous substances. Administrators may be select representative extremely hazardous substance from the substance of listed referred to 11,002 of this title. The purpose of this review, the administrator shall report the interim finding of the Congress not later than 7 months after October 17, 1986, issue a final report of the findings recommendation to Congress not later than 18 months out after October 17, 1986. Such report shall be prepared in consultation of the state appropriate federal agencies. To the report required is a subsection including the administrative finding regarding each and of the following: monitoring, detecting, preventing, in time manner significantly release extremely hazardous substances, determine the release and extremely hazardous substances. 2. Determine the magnitude and direction of the hazards posed in each release. 3. Identify the specific substance. 4. Provide data on the specific chemical compositions of such release. 5. Determine the relative concentration of that constitute substances. B. The status of the public emergency alert devices and system, providing timely, effective public warning of the accidental release of extremely hazardous substances into the environment, including release into the atmosphere, surface water, groundwater. The facilities produce and store and use significant quantities of extremely hazardous substances. C. The technical economical facility establishing, maintaining operational parameter alter or system for detecting, releasing such extremely hazardous substances into the atmosphere, such as the surface water, groundwater. Facilities manufacture, use, and store significant quantities of substances. Recommendations in the report required for the subsection shall also be administrative recommendations in the initiatives to support the development of a new, improved, and technology systems that would facilitate the timely monitoring, detection, prevention of the release of extremely hazardous substances, and B. The improving devices or systems that effectively alerting the public in timely manner in the event of the accidental release of extremely hazardous substances. Pubs 99 through 499, Title 3, Section 305, October 17, 1986, the 100 Stat 173.5, transfer of functions. The transfer of all functions, personnel, assets, components, authorities, grant programs, liabilities of federal emergency management agencies, including the functions of under the Secretary of Federal Emergency Management, regulating thereto to a federal emergency agency. Section 315A1 of the Title 6 Domestic Security. Transfer of functions, personnel, assess the liabilities of the federal management agency, including the functions of Directory of Federal Emergency Management Agency relating to their and to Secretary Homeland Security for treatment of related references. See the formerly Section 3131, Section 551D, 552D, 557 of Title 6. The Domestic Security and the Department of Homeland Security recognizes reorganizations plans of November 25th, 2002, as modified, set out no under the section of 542 of Title 6. And 42, Subchapter 2, Reporting Requirements, titled The Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 116, Emergency Planning, Community Right to Know, Subchapter Reporting Requirements.